Hey, John Yard here. We've got a steel chainsaw and we're going to sharpen the chain. And specifically what I want to show today is we've got kind of the traditional file tools for sharpening a chainsaw, and I'm just going to compare that to using a file guide. This is a little bit of a newer tool, and we're just going to compare that, and then I'm going to show you exactly how you can use the file guide to sharpen the chainsaw chain. So first of all, kind of the traditional method, and we're going to zoom in here so that you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. But the traditional method, what you would use is you would use a combination of a round file, a flat file, and this multi-tool slash depth gauge device. And what you would do is you would go all the way around the chain and you would try to hold this round file steady and even and at a 30-degree angle to sharpen all the cutter links. And you would go all the way around the chainsaw doing all of those cutter links, and then you would go back through with your multi-tool and you would put it on top of the links so that just a piece of the guide link is showing, and then you would file it with the flat file so that it's bringing down the height of that guide link. And so with a file guide, all of these functions are combined into one, and you can actually see the files are essentially the same. If you pop open one of these file guides, it has round files in there, it's got the flat file in there, and it just kind of goes in the end so that you can replace them. And so that's kind of the difference with a file guide, and it's holding it at a consistent 30-degree angle for this one. Most chainsaws use a 30-degree angle when you're sharpening. And one other thing to mention about the file guide is that really the only thing you have to look for if you're buying one to sharpen your own chainsaw is the pitch. So each chainsaw, you can find the pitch for the chain on the bar. If you've already got it set up, it'll say the pitch, or also if you just bought a new chain, it'll say it on the box. And technically the pitch is just the distance of three of these chain rivets divided by 2, but it's essentially measuring the distance between the links. Okay, so you got to make sure that that's right before you sharpen the chainsaw chain. So with a file guide, I'm just going to show you how to do that now. The first thing you want to do is you want to find the break in your chain. And the way that you do that is on this chainsaw, there's 2 cutter links that are facing the same direction. So usually it alternates, but at this location, there's 2 facing the same way. On other chains, that might just be extra space in the links, or it might be a specific like colored mark, for example, but there's always a way that you can find the chain break. And so I'm gonna start there because then I know when I go all the way around, I know where to start so that I'm not just going in an endless loop sharpening my chain all day. And so I'm gonna start there, and what I wanna do with my file guide is I wanna first find the arrow. There's an arrow on there that shows me which direction I'm supposed to pull, all right? So I found the direction I'm supposed to pull, and I'm gonna line that up so that the round file is touching just on the inside of this cutter link, while also having the flat file rest slightly on top of my guide link, okay? And then you'll notice that there's, on the file guide, it's already angled. And so this angle is essentially telling me what a 30-degree angle looks like. So that when I make my strokes to sharpen the chain, I'm just pulling it in alignment with this part of the file guide, okay? So for sharpening my chain, I'm basically gonna do maybe around 3 hits on 3 pulls on each of these links to sharpen them. And when I'm doing that, one other thing I want to really keep in mind is I want to try to keep this as level as possible so that I'm not sharpening it unevenly, all right? And so basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sharpen these couple pulls, go to the next one that's facing the same direction, again do a couple pulls, and I'm only sharpening on the pulls, I'm not pushing it, all right? And then once I've done the whole chain, basically I'm just gonna flip it around so that I can do the cutter links that are facing in the opposite direction. So I've turned the chainsaw around, and then I'm gonna take my file guide, I'm gonna flip it over so that the little arrow is again pointing towards me, and then I'm going to just start doing the links that are pointed in the opposite direction. So again, you can see I've got the angle of the file guide showing me what 30 degrees looks like, and I've got both my round file touching the cutter and my flat file touching the top of the guide link. And then I'm gonna do my pulls here as well. And then I can just go down the list, do all of the links this way. And then once I finish that, I've got a sharper chain. And then just a couple notes while we're here about when you should sharpen your chainsaw chain. So if you're doing mostly dry wood cuts a bit harder than green or wet wood does. And so if you're doing dry wood, you probably want to sharpen the chain every time you put more fuel in the chainsaw. If you're doing green wood, you could probably wait a little bit longer and maybe do every other. But most of the time, you're probably gonna wanna sharpen it about every time you put fuel in it. So those are the main things to think about when you're using a file guide. And yeah, so I hope you found this helpful. Cheers.